How you doing, guys? Big Mac Ghazghkull here again today, back once again with another Orc video for you. I've been doing some painting and I recorded it yesterday. It's coming right up. So, as stated in the intro, I have been doing some painting, been working on this. Now, it's very far away, it's hard for you to see, but I'll put a picture up for you so you can see it a little bit closer. It is basically Ghazghkull's head if you can't work it out from the picture. And it's painted with contrast paints and some lead belcher 1 metallic paint as well. But yeah, painted with contrast paints mainly. And that's the way I'm going to crack on with the with most of Ghazghkull. I think I'm going to try and use as much contrast paint as possible. I really like the effect you get for orc skin using the contrast paints, and this is my method. I've decided to film it and show you the method in action, so you can just follow along if you like the method. It's not a tutorial this, but it's just showing you how I do my orc skin now. Prior to contrast paints coming out, I was leaning towards using a lot of glazes and a lot of washes to do my orc skin. You may remember I did a video not too long ago, well, probably it's a while ago now, about 6 months ago, maybe longer, about doing orc skin quick using Beeltan green shade and using Waywatcher green glaze. But I don't need to do that anymore because contrast paints came out, and now I use Plague Bearer Flesh and Militarum green. I also use a pre-shading method, which gives you really interesting results as well. It's using red as a base coat, and then sort of zenithal, but not quite pure zenithal highlighting with a wraith bone primer. Yeah. So anyway, I better crack on, and you can watch the video and see if you like the method yourself and the end results. Although you've already seen the end results from the picture I've shown you, and I'll probably whack a picture of it in the thumbnail as well. Now you can see Ghazghkull's head in front of you guys. This is my working area, just where I do my live streams from, basically. I've got a new camera set up here. The arm pointing down at my desk is a flexible arm, and I do knock it a couple of times in this video, so apologies if that makes you dizzy at all. I just knocked it there. The first thing I'll be tackling in the video is Ghazghkull's adamantium skull. And I'm using the old Citadel bolt gun metal paint for that. It's quite gloopy, you'll notice, if you look into the pot. But it's a very old paint. It's probably almost 30 years old, about 27 years old, something like that. Not quite that old, actually. About 25 years old, 20 years old. But anyway, yeah, I'm just whacking that over all the areas that are going to be metal in the end. It's basically the top of his skull and a few of the gubbins attached to the top of the skull. I don't show it in this video, but I'm planning on going back in with some Basilicanum grey paint. That's one of the contrast paints, thinned down 50-50 with some contrast medium, or maybe just thinning it down with water actually, because it works quite well as a wash if you thin a contrast paint down with water. The only other part of Ghazghkull that needs a bit of attention with the metallic paint is, of course, one of his teeth has got a metallic cap on it. It's the big one on the bottom left hand side of the jaw. So I might as well skip ahead to the next stage now. For the next stage, you'll notice I've left Ghazghkull's face on the desk there. I've taken it off because it's not fully attached. I've just blue tacked it on for the time being, just so I can get into the mouth and paint that area. I'm using Flesh Terror Red here, and it covers even areas that don't have that much undercoat on. It covers them quite well, or very well. Surprisingly well, I thought. But you'll see here it goes on the tongue really well, and there's just a little bit of white undercoat on the tip of the tongue there, and red on the back of the tongue, and that really gives you just the front of the tongue looks a lot more pinky than the back of the tongue, and it works really, really well, I thought. Now this next part is a bit of a tricky bit. I'm going to attempt the eyes live painting with the new setup and everything. It's utter madness the fact that I've even attempted this, but I'm going to show the video at regular speed just so you can see how amazed I was with the success I had. And then I'm going to attempt, if my paint hasn't dried on my bristles now, I'm going to attempt to just get a bit of red in the eye socket there. Just a little bit. Oh, that went surprisingly well. So I've got a little bit of red paint in the eye socket there. I'm really happy with that actually. I am amazed I managed to do that. I hope the camera stayed focused for that. The bionic eye is a little less challenging because it's protruding from his skull. But I'll just talk you through the technique I used anyway. I painted the flesh tearer straight over that bolt gun metal paint to allow some of the metallicness to shine through. Now we're about to tackle the flesh on Ghazghkull and the gummy areas and stuff as well. I've got dark earth flesh open on the table there, and I will tackle all the gummy areas with dark earth flesh. I've painted a tiny bit of the flesh tearer red into part of his ear and onto part of the gum as well, in the hope that that shows through a little bit. With my undercoating technique, using the red undercoat first, there's a fair bit of red showing on his gums as is, so I'm hoping that will come through the dark oath, so it doesn't look too fleshy. It looks a bit red and a bit fleshy. I'm just looking at the model to pick and choose the areas I want to hit with some of the dark earth flesh, and I go straight in there with the ear. The areas you want to hit really are the areas that, if you look on the Ghazghkull on the GW website, the areas that do look a little bit warmer, a little bit more human and fleshy. So around the lips, around the mouth, maybe a little bit on the nose, and the ears, because don't forget, like, your ears get quite hot throughout the day, so there's a lot of blood going to your ears, and there's blood vessels near the extremities. So I'm looking for the areas where there's blood vessels near the extremities on a human and applying that to an orc basically. At this stage it looks a little like a toddler that's been eating too much chocolate. You'll notice when we go to the wider angle in just a second that I've got a little bit of paint on my thumbnail now. I felt like I had a little bit too much paint on my bristles, so I just wiped it off on my thumbnail. Just something close by so the paint isn't drying on the bristles. And then I'm tackling the areas that would be like scarred around his neck there. I've taken the face off again so I can get to it a little more easily. And some of these areas are quite red anyway from the red primer that I used, so they're going to be in the shadow. The areas on the right hand side of his face, on the bionic eye side of his face, they're going to be in the shadow anyway, so you're not going to see a lot of those areas. But on the more exposed side, on the left hand side of his face, you need to make sure you get in there with the fleshy colour if you want to try this technique. The next paint you'll see me open and put on the table is Plague Bearer Flesh. This is the lighter of the two greens I'll be using. With the contrast paints, I like to work with the lighter colour first on all those high areas, and then any areas that I want to go darker, I'll come in with the Militarum green. So I'll go all over the mouth and all the fleshy areas I've done with the Dark Oath flesh, and then I'll hit it with the Plague Bearer flesh, and then I'll see how the Dark Oath flesh comes through that Plague Bearer flesh, because it's already started to dry, the Dark Oath. So I can't just simply blend it too much, but because of the because you can see through the translucent nature of contrast paints, because you can see the colour underneath, you get to judge then how much of that is showing through, and then if you want any less of it showing through, you just go in with the darker colour. You'll see as well I'm putting the Plague Bearer flesh under his chin there, and it's looking very red still. But when I go in with the Militarum green and put it under the chin, it starts to look more browny and like a natural sort of shadow you see on green things. You can see even prior to the Astra Militarum green stage, it's already coming together in my opinion to how I want it to look. As I reach for the Militarum green, I notice that it's quite separated, so I like to give it a thorough shaking before I open this one. And then once I'm happy with that, I open it up and then get to work on those areas where there's a bit more red and a bit more of that dark oath showing through, and I want to take it back down to the sort of mottled end result that I get. So first off, I go to work on that top lip where it looks like a bit of a harsh tide mark of the dark oath ending, and I go under the cheekbones where there's a bit more of the red showing through, the red primer, just to get more to those sort of natural tree-like tones, the sort of greeny brown tones that you get when you mix green and red paints together. I could tell you exactly how much I thinned the paints down at various stages, but in truth I think it's better to just work with the paint yourself, because depending on the weather conditions for you in your local area, like it's quite warm for me as I'm painting this, and the paint's drying out quicker on the palette and it's becoming thicker more quickly than it would on, say, a winter's day here in the UK. So depending on your atmospheric conditions, it really changes how the paint behaves. So I think it's better for you to work with it to get it to a consistency that you like. But at this stage, I'm just thinning the contrast paint down with water, and it behaves more like a wash when you thin it with water. I'm washing it into the sort of groove in the back of his neck that goes underneath that wire, and you'll see I go heavy in there either side of the wire, just to give it a lot of shadow either side of that wire there. I'm pretty pleased with how it's looking at this stage. I'm just glancing around the miniature for any other key areas to hit. I go behind the adamantium skull a little bit and a little more lightly down the side of his neck there, but that's pretty much it. Yeah, so I've got the still image on the screen for you now, so you can take one last look at it. You'll see those sort of tide mark areas around his mouth a little bit. You can treat them a little better simply by trying to make sure you keep the Dark Oath flesh wet when you apply the first coat of Plague Bearer. That'll basically allow you to do a little bit of wet blending, and it'll give you a smoother transition. But not many people are going to look this closely at my miniature, so it's a nice paint job that for me. You're going to be about a good at least 12 inches away from the miniature when you're playing against me, so I'm happy with this paint job. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Is it something you'll be trying out with the contrast paints? Before you go, don't forget to give the video a like if you've enjoyed it. Any questions you've got, you can ask in the comments below. There's a button here for you to subscribe if you've not already done so, and a Patreon link here if you'd like to support the channel. There's also a couple of videos here for you to check out at your leisure. Thanks very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the battlefield.